Hello again, everyone, and there's a very particular type of video today because it was all the way back on February 7th of 2013 that I posted the very first Forever Cinematic movie reviews on this channel. Now, obviously, there were several things I did beforehand while I was involved with my film production stuff, and the video updates I did before that, which are a little depressing to watch in some cases here and there in terms of the quality and my energy and stuff like that, but as this thing is getting posted, it's February 7th, 2023, marking 10 years. And I figure find some way to kind of go through and kind of talk about the evolution of the channel, things that have happened and stuff like that. So I actually put together a little bit of a structure of certain things on here because I tried a different version of this video where I had no structure whatsoever. I was like, no, that just doesn't work at all. So I figure highlight certain things and can go through and kind of like focus things in a certain way to make it more succinct and more followable, and way I can just kind of tell you things much more pertinent to the channel and everything like that. But it's very interesting that the first two reviews I did in the channel, which were Dread and Bullet to the Head, which were, Dread was brand new on DVD at the time, then Bullet to the Head was recently released in theaters. They're the only two ones I did on my old standard definition Sony VX2100. Now, I use this thing a little bit on the fixture, on Dead of Night, on Kill Shot, some things here and there. And it was just at the point in time where I was going to get my tax return and I was looking towards upgrading to an HD camcorder. But it was like, okay, I started off like just as a test type of thing. I released two of them at the same day because I figured if you're going to launch it with a little extra something on top of it, a little bit more reaffirmation of the whole thing. But such an interesting thing dealing with this whole thing where it was still a meaty DV thing. So I was still recording on tape at the time, and thank fucking Christ I don't have to do that anymore. It was just, recording onto tape is fucking awful. Just a terrible, terrible process to deal with things. I hate it. But this thing got me through up to that point in time, and then we moved on to high definition here with my Sony CX580V, which is the original one. I'll be talking about this one a little later on with certain other things going on with the course of the channel at a certain point, but battery's not working right now, so I can't turn it on. But anyways, like, okay, I launched everything in that regard, and yeah, it was rough going for a time. It was like a lot of things, trying to find my footing, trying to find the presentation quality, how I want to do things in a certain way. Even like the first couple ones I did, kind of slapdash sort of synopses things. I put some random rock music behind it. It was just kind of like throwing things together, slapping things against the wall, see what sticked and see what I needed to change and stuff like that. A lot of things went off in the first year, kind of like stumbling blocks and trying to figure out what's going to work and just see what's going to happen on the whole thing. And not too many things I would say would be a highlight of the first year. Obviously, the one I did for Fire in the Sky continued to maintain a lot of traction over the years. Obviously, I did the Redux one this past year because they got the new Screen Factory version. I got the release from Australia as well, so I could actually get the most amount of information about the entire production for it and do a much more fuller video, which I very much love that video. But obviously, since it's brand new and the other one's been around for 10 years, there's a certain disproportionate quality in terms of like the traction it's gotten. But a lot of stuff was like getting up to like Forever Horror Month that year was just like such a interesting type of thing because I started the WordPress blog for Forever Cinematic in 2011 and didn't do too much like the first year. A couple of sporadic horror movie reviews on the 1st October. But the following October, I actually did a concerted effort to make sure that I had one new horror movie review posted every single day throughout the month of October, which I garnered about 40 or so, because some days I actually got more than one out. So it was like such a great thing that kind of sparked off Forever Horror Month based off of the website I did prior to that, up to about early 2009. So about 98 up to 2009, about 10 years in that regard too, where I was doing that whole thing and kind of had to break off from doing it because I got much more into my filmmaking stuff. It was just too much to kind of deal with the amount of time I had, so I kind of pushed that off to the side and continued moving forward on filmmaking, other projects in that regard. But just like revitalize the thing because I really missed doing that at a certain point in time. So I was writing over 200 written reviews on that blog. But obviously, when the next October came up in 2013, I decided I did write a couple of reviews still then, but I really wanted to move over and make it into a proper video series of Forever Horror Month stuff. So I got a lot of things done that month. Some of them I've done Redux ones on, like In the Mouth of Madness, and like I said, The Howling, and some other things like that. Some things I'm still planning to do, like Exorcist 3 at some point in time, just in terms of wanting to make sure I have enough time dedicated to making sure I can get that done. But it was a nice first step, but a lot of the stuff in terms of the presentation was being like way over theatrical, way overblown, so it doesn't hold up very well. It's kind of cringy. But obviously, that was one of those things I was still trying to work out in the first year or so of doing the whole thing. And there's this whole phase shortly after that where I get into the Warlock and the Darkman reviews where I'm doing this hyperactive type of presentation. I'm just ripping through everything so fast. I'm talking so goddamn fast. I can't go back and watch them because it's I would just want to watch them at half speed or something like that because they're just too much. But all these different things kind of went off to make the entire presentation better over time. I think about 2015 is really where things started hitting off to such a really good degree there. But I want to kind of get back to my kind of structure in a certain way, kind of dealing with certain things that went off. My topics are arranged in such a way where I don't think I had in the best order, but there are a couple unproduced videos that I had at certain points in time. Stuff that got partially shot, stuff got fully shot, and some stuff never quite got around to despite several attempts at doing at it. One of them was an Underworld franchise movie retrospective, like I did for the Star Trek films early on, or the Nightmare on Elm Street thing, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. But it was one of those things I really wanted to do it, but I found out as I was going through the entire shooting of the videos, there was just way too much stuff I wanted to talk about in terms of production stuff, in terms of critiques and stuff like that. It's I don't even think I got past the first film and realized this is going to be way too long to do as a dedicated video for the entire franchise. And so I kind of put it on pause. I think I may have tried it another time at some point. I don't know. It feels like I've been trying to get a handle on maybe doing something covering at least the first Underworld film, or at least the first 2 or 3 or something like that, for such a long time that I've never really kind of got my hooks directly into it to really kind of get a fresh perspective and get a feeling like there's an audience for it on the channel, that people are very much interested in. I'm kind of interested in doing it. Obviously, I bought the 4K editions over a year ago as a kind of thinking about maybe doing it very quickly after that, but sort of things happened that avoided that. But I'd like to hear what you guys think about the entire thing if you want to see that. But it's something I've been kind of hitting off because there's certain things I want to levy as critiques against it, but it's kind of a weird franchise to a certain degree in that regard, in terms of critical analysis in that regard. But in early 2016, when I did the Fright Night and the Lost Boys reviews, at the time I was promoting it as doing a trio of vampire reviews. But obviously that didn't end up happening. I kind of I couldn't quite pin down exactly what else to do, so I kind of moved on to doing some Schwarzenegger flicks after that. I did actually shoot a video regarding a certain film, but I felt so kind of funny about it that I didn't actually keep the footage, because I actually bought and did the review, shot the review for Tony Scott's The Hunger. The thing is that the film is an absolute gorgeous looking film, just brilliantly looking film, but it's so thin on story. It's got maybe 15-20 minutes worth of story in a 90-minute film or so. It just feels I struggled getting an analysis done, and I was okay, I'll try shooting it. I don't know if it's going to work or not. And so I kind of I shot the thing, and I felt so funny about it. It's I felt so kind of lukewarm, kind of a weak video to kind of get into, and I didn't feel like I'd be very much interested. So I kind of I need to get this off my mind or whatnot. I got to get this off my shoulders or whatnot. So I just deleted all the footage right away and just said, this is going to work, and I just sold off the Blu-ray and stuff like that. So there was that, and a year or two prior to us actually doing the commentary for Clue, I had actually shot a video for it. But this weird type of thing where it's this had to been back in actually more than a year or two. It would have been 2014, while I was kind of testing out different microphones I might have been wanting to upgrade to. I tested out a Rode video mic, and there was an Asden microphone as well that I was kind of toying around with, trying to see what works. And I thought one of them sounded okay, but then I shot the video for Clue, and just I could never settle in with the mic sound on it. It sounded too muffled. It just didn't sound right. And so I I shot the thing, I kind of edited part of it, but never really got the whole thing done. And I tried to get someone else to kind of work on the audio to kind of fix it up to make it sound a little bit more like I'm used to. And it never quite worked out, and I don't even have the footage anymore. When I had to switch over from Final Cut 7 over to Final Cut 10 for the new computer and stuff like that, for the new operating system, a lot of that stuff got completely thrown out because I just couldn't access the software anymore to make use of the projects and stuff like that. So I just dumped a whole bunch of capture files or render files. So I don't even have it anymore. But something I tried doing at one point in time that didn't make it through because of technical issues. And some people I saw at least one comment recently, maybe it was an older video in such a way, but older comment or whatnot, saying like, someone's surprised I never did a video on Drive, the 2011 film with Ryan Gosling. And it's like, I've actually tried it at least 2 or 3 times, but I never got it actually in front of the camera to do anything with it. I've gotten through watching the film, writing up notes, but I got to the end of the thing and I got to the end of watching the film or I was doing certain research, that something always would throw me off about the experience of getting up to doing a video on it because something just didn't quite slot into place for me on a mental level in that regard. So I've kind of toyed around with it. I tried it, I think it was about 2015, maybe about 2017 or something like that, and never really kind of clicked into place to make it feel right. I even tried it maybe about 2021 for a 10th anniversary thing, and that still didn't quite function for me. So I don't know what it is about the film. I like the film, but when I get into a critical analysis, there's something that just doesn't quite fall into place. I did a written review of it many, many years ago when I first discovered the film on DVD back in 2012 or whatnot. So I actually wrote a written review of it, but when I get up to doing a more updated analysis, there's something that falls off because there's just a lot of things in terms of the background of the film and certain other things. There's a version that did a complete rescore on it. So it's like, okay, how am I supposed to really kind of talk about that when I don't really have access to that version of it, and I don't really want to get into that whole thing. So it's kind of a weird thing. How far deep into analysis do I get? How far do I get into certain things that doesn't quite resonate with me about the directors and filmmakers' intentions with it? It's always kind of a weird type of thing, because I just look at it as more of a kind of moody crime thriller that's kind of evocative of Manhunter or something else like that, but that's not really what the filmmakers' intentions are behind it. So it's always been kind of a weird push and pull type of thing, where it's I like the style of it, but certain things about behind the scenes stuff never really makes it work for me going into talking about it in that regard. So maybe I'll figure it out one day, but right now it just hasn't quite put itself together in the right pieces for me to kind of make it work in my head in that regard. But in terms of, obviously, doing video production stuff, there's always some element of technical stuff that can go awry. There has been a number of instances in that regard where certain things just haven't gone right, where there's been a couple of times where I've actually deleted pertinent footage that I needed for the video, because I do multiple takes and stuff like that, and then I have to go back and delete all the bad ones. I've been a lot better about that in the last couple of years, but there's certain times early, the first couple of years, where I was a little bit more reckless about the whole thing, and I actually deleted footage I needed for the video, and I'd either try to go back and do a disc recovery thing to try to have it pull the information back together. And I think it worked on the Halloween 3 review I did, where the quality of the video is not quite the same because it's kind of reconstructed from random parts. But there's a lot of stuff involved with that same Forever Horror Month in 2014, where there's a section I deleted from the Store of Echoes review about Kevin Bacon's performance, but it still kind of worked without it. So I felt like that's fine. I don't think I really need to have that stuff on there. So it's not pertinent. So I can still keep it out and still maintains a very good video. But there's one, I think it was Graveyard Shift 2 I did, where I have something to talk about on those films shortly, where I actually deleted, because I had the proper opening, then I have the synopsis portion, then I go back into the introduction of the film proper. I actually deleted that section, so I did I did dozens of takes trying to get it right, where the problem is I can't say anything that I'm going to say in the footage I already have that follows that, so I had to keep readjusting myself over and over again to say exactly what I needed to lead into what I already have. Because it's easier if I just okay, I have part A, but I remove part B or part C. Well, that's fine. I just know okay, A and B, I can follow on a certain line of stream of consciousness to get up to a certain point to fill in this information right here without trying to go back into something else. It feels a lot easier to reshoot the back end instead of the front end type of stuff, because it's just kind of that weird stream of consciousness thing where you kind of deviate into a different place that kind of like touches on the stuff you're already going to say in the next clip or whatnot. So it's a very weird type of thing in that regard, and that's happened a time or two here and there, but I've at least been able to go back and plug it back up and fix it and stuff like that. But I just remember those early years hooking it up, because I couldn't even do it on the Mac. I had to hook the damn camera up to like a Windows PC or whatnot, or a laptop, and try to use some file recovery software to try and dig it out at like fucking 11 o'clock at night or some goddamn shit. It was just really bad. Really bad stuff. So be careful when you're going through and picking out your footage to get rid of certain things, that you don't delete the wrong shit. Because I do have like I can go ahead and hit like protect clip or something else like that, but I have to go in there, find the damn thing, select it. So I'm very good about checking all the clips and make sure I'm not deleting anything that's actually needed later on in editing. Otherwise, I'm dumping all this stuff in here. I gotta weed through it every single time I'm looking for stuff. So I delete all the bad takes and just keep the stuff I need. But some other technical things happened when I was doing the Evil Dead Trilogy retrospective video, which is a big, massive thing where I really should have broken them up into separate videos, because it would have been a lot easier to do that, because there was just way too much information going through that whole thing. But there's a point in that whole thing where I'm shooting the whole thing, doing a certain take, which ended up being a very long take, where I forgot to turn my tabletop fan off. And so the whirling sound of the fan in the background is picking up on the audio, so I actually go back and filter it all out, which was a little bit of a thing. If you go back and watch it with headphones on, you can probably pick up a little bit of the audio artifacts in that regard, where I'm trying to get it kind of filtered out to a certain degree, but it still thankfully worked out well enough where I didn't have to go back and shoot a whole bunch of shit. But much more of an interesting one that probably no one's ever picked up on is in the collateral review. Now, I did that whole thing where I shot part of it like Saturday night, then I went to bed and came back up and finished the rest of it Sunday morning or something else like that. And the interesting thing is, for the first portion of it I was shooting the next day, I forgot to turn my color light backlights on. And I was like, oh shit. I just shot a whole big section of this whole thing that I don't want to go back and redo. But I realized I could actually go in and take a still image of me on one of the other pieces of footage with the proper lighting, and actually garbage matte all the freaking background around me with little feathered edges and stuff like that to kind of fill it out. It's like, though it's a still image, the YouTube compression stuff is going to create enough sort of random digital noise where it's not going to come off as a static image behind me. So it actually worked. But you actually can, if you go back and watch the video, you can kind of tell for a certain section of the video, I'm trying to use as little of the on-camera footage as possible. I mean, I'm using as many clips as I can to just make it like a couple of seconds here and there where I got cut back to me for certain reasons here and there. So it's like, I made it work for my expertise and stuff like that. I don't think anyone's picked up on it because, like I said, the use of that particular footage is so sparse in the video, hard to pick up on. But if you could probably go back and kind of do a comparison, you can probably tell something's just a tad bit off in terms of like the glow or whatnot. Not as much of a reactive lighting on me or something else like that. So it might come off just a tad bit off, but it's not as noticeable if you didn't already knew about it. But that's kind of an interesting thing in that regard. But the more not so much a technical type of thing, it's so much because this happened on a video before. I did I was doing the Spectre review on opening weekend back in 2015, I believe it was. I think it was, or the year before, something else like that. One of those two. 2017, I don't know, whatever year that fucking Spectre came out, I don't know. But I think it was in the middle of that video where the light bulb on my halogen work light, what I use as my key light, actually burned out in the middle of the video. So I had to reinstall the whole thing, and then actually I didn't adjust the exposure on the video. So it's a lot more blown out in the second half of the video here because it's a much newer bulb and it's much brighter. But when I was doing the Bourne Identity review, the damn bulb did burn out at me at a certain point in time, so I don't think I might have actually partially shot the video, or didn't actually, I think I partially shot it, but then I got in this whole week of just fucking shit. I got into this big bout of insomnia for several days, where I just felt terrible. I don't know if I caught something or something else like that earlier in the week. It was like a real short burst of something that I had earlier that week. But I got this insomnia and stuff like that. It was just a really, really bad week of shit. So, like, I couldn't get the video completed. Then I got all this other shit for about a week. Then I eventually got around to shooting the rest of the video. But once I got the video done, I got the goddamn copyright claim from Universal, and the thing got blocked. Then eventually got it released, but it was still demonetized and shit like that. And similar things happened when I did the Miami Vice review, where I shot the video, and then I had my entire health crisis at the beginning of last year, and I was in the hospital for 2 days, and it took me a couple of weeks to get my stuff back up on certain levels of energy and stuff like that so I could finish doing the video. Then once I get the video out, the next day it gets blocked and all that shit. I kept dealing with the thing for the next 2 months, dealing with a whole bunch of emotional things going on, where again, I was trying to deal with that, trying to get the thing released and stuff like that. I was trying to go through like backdoor type of channels to kind of contact people to get in touch with someone at Universal or their media management company or something else like that. That is impossible to deal with. Eventually, I just went through the appeals process and all this other shit and finally got the thing released, but it took so goddamn long. It kind of felt like it adversely affected the channel because I had so many weeks of not putting anything out because I was recovering from my health issues, that we did get commentaries out for about like the end of January. Then I didn't get the Vice video out for like another week. And then it gets blocked and things get demonetized and shit like that. I'm dealing with this, that, and the other thing. Then a couple weeks later, the freaking mic jack on the freaking camcorder starts losing conductivity. So I'm getting like audio through maybe one channel, or I'm getting a lot of static in some ways like that. So we were doing like commentaries for My Bloody Valentine 3D, and there was probably another one in there. I don't remember which one that we recorded, and it's like I had to do some weird filtering to get all the staticky parts out of the whole thing. And then I had another emotional moment dealing with that whole thing because we got a 4K camera to replace this one. But every time you try to record in 4K, the damn thing would crash. And this was apparently a known issue for several years from a lot of different people who used the damn thing, but Sony didn't have a fix for the whole thing. It was such a massive piece of crap where, like, okay, Sony would probably want me to send the damn thing in to them to have them work on. It's like, okay, how many weeks am I going to be without the camcorder? And I can't do anything now. Couldn't even finish the Showdown Little Tokyo review without actually getting a camcorder where I could record the audio for the synopsis portion. So, a lot of things went off from that point, and it's like, okay, we just ended up getting a replacement version that was a refurb from B&H Photo Video. That was the same thing. Got a warranty, extended protection plan, the whole thing, and it's been working out just fine since. So I'm very glad that things got back up on the levels there. I didn't have to deal with the weird settings on that 4K Sony camera. The colors never looked right. The lens was a lot wider. The audio stuff never sounded right because it would peak out here and there and everywhere. Just like it just was not working for me. It just really stressed me the fuck out. So a lot of these weird things happened over the course of time. And some things I was able to kind of work out, but other things when it's more hardware-based type of stuff, it's a lot harder. I mean, when I was doing my Blair Witch Project video, there was the whole thing where I shot the whole thing in the midst of me going through some stressful stuff in my life and various other things, where I knew I had to go back and reshoot some things, kind of restructure some information in the whole video. But I went off and shot the things, and I listened back to the whole thing and found out the conductivity of the mic cable had worn off, and there was all this static all over the damn thing, and there's nothing I could do to fix it. I had like an emotional meltdown. I didn't know if I could get the video finished at any point in time. I had a really, really, really bad time at that point in time, back in about October 2020. That's right, that's the only video I think I got out that month. But eventually I got myself together later that day. I reshot it properly with a different mic cable, got the thing finished, and it's actually one of my favorite videos. I absolutely love that video so much because there's so much to get into in terms of the fascinating behind the scenes, and it's such a kind of a nostalgia thing for me in that regard. It's like I really like that film so much. I remember the experience of it so very well. Good stuff. I just really, really like that video, and through a lot of these technical things, I've been able to kind of persevere and get things back around, but certain things just really fuck you over real bad. But I'm not talking about the milestones, the much more positive stuff in that regard. It's like a couple of the videos and a couple of things here that I feel like were particular milestones, because the Elm Street retrospective video I did for the full franchise in 2014 was very much a very like one of my biggest videos I'd done at that point in time, pretty much the biggest one because it took me several weeks to get it done. Remember just doing update videos saying I'm still working on it, I'm trying to get it done, but there's a lot of stuff involved with it because it probably ran about close to an hour long, if not a little less than that, but here and there and everywhere. It was a very big thing, and it was a very big performer. It's got a lot of thousands of views. It gets a lot of things involved with it in terms of like reactions and likes and comments, so much stuff in that regard. But I think that the next big thing I had in terms of milestone was in beginning of 2015, where I got this new microphone, which is a Audio-Technica Pro 24CM condenser microphone, because I got off of this previous Audio-Technica. It's like I really wanted to improve the quality of the audio, and like I said, I was testing out different mics in the previous year that didn't quite work out so well. Once I got this thing in the beginning of 2015, I've kept with it ever since then. Everything you hear since then is recorded on this microphone. And so I started with the first blood review, and I thought that was a really solid video that further established how I would do things going forward. Just in terms of the depth of analysis, the research, stuff like that involved the whole film, going through, listening to commentary tracks, and looking up other information about it, just finding a much more deeper depth of that. I feel like that pretty much carried on from that point forward, doing stuff with like the Black Rain review or the Escape from New York one, where I did is like a combo, like reviewing the whole film, but also reviewing the new collector's edition Blu-ray at the time, which was pretty much like the first two videos I did where I actually had a Blu-ray drive of the computer where I could actually rip the footage directly from the Blu-ray stuff to get the HD footage and everything like that. So that was very much, again, another milestone in that regard, and just hit off very well. In 2015, I just felt like that thing really started clicking into place in terms of just making the videos much more fuller, much more deeply analytical, going from like the more 10 to 15 minute reviews to much more longer type of things that felt more fuller, much more deeper, the more deeper analysis that reflected my written reviews, because I really started doing all that type of stuff in terms of my own style of written reviews, because I kept looking at all these kind of websites, like mainly horror movie websites, like, and you took no time to really do any sort of analysis on the film when you wrote this review. Like, it's like saying you probably wrote in like 2 minutes. Stuff like that. It's like, even like there's this one review that was done for my film Dead of Night from a certain website. Like, man, you didn't take, I gave you the full DVD that has a commentary track, it has additional, the web episodes, stuff like that, and guy just probably wrote the damn thing. Like I said, in like 2 minutes, took no time to really kind of analyze the film, to understand it, and look at any of the bonus features, kind of get further insight. The whole thing is like, and you just didn't give a shit. I just like that. Why you bother writing a review if you're not going to put in the depth of time to really kind of analyze things, go much more fuller in depth about the whole thing? So when I brought in some other people to do other reviews on the Forever Horror website, I kind of push them to be a little more deeper about analyzing things, getting much more fuller into talking about all the other aspects of the entire filmmaking process. So this thing I really kind of started into in 2015, reflecting that mentality instead of doing stuff that's really kind of short and quick and stuff like that. I really want to get much more fuller into analysis on that regard. But there's much more like 2016 was a bit more of a weird type of thing, because had some things, they're pretty good at the beginning of the year, but then I had a lot of life changes going on and very emotional things that were happening at that point in time over the summer, where there's a big gap of things happening from like sudden death up to about September in that regard, where I only really got the mini review of Star Trek Beyond out, where I just did everything voiceover, kind of scripted in that regard. But a lot of stuff I did when I came back was like doing the Brimstone TV series retrospective. I did like Time Cop and Leviathan and stuff like that, and then early the following year doing like Heat and getting up to stuff like some really good stuff in 2017. I like doing like stuff like I did the Christopher Lambert film Gunman. I did Mortal Kombat. I did a really good opening weekend review of Alien Covenant, and did The Crow and Predator and stuff like that. So I was really hitting off a much stronger stride as I went along after that point in time. Just felt much more confident and comfortable. I was trying to improve the presentation in terms of like a visual standpoint, and the lighting much more better. It was a lot very inconsistent in those first couple of years. Like sometimes it'd be overexposed. It wasn't very well lit in that regard. It was a little too like harsh lighting on me at some points in time, or a lot of the framing was not very, very good. I'd be like, I have a lot too much headroom. I'd only be like up the shoulders and stuff like that. So when I got much more into the latter half of 2016 forward, I was framing things a little bit better. I was lighting things a little more consciously. Now, see, once we got into the house here, the townhouse and whatnot, everything started really clicking into place in terms of the lighting schemes and all the different things. It got much more wider framing on the videos. Everything just felt like it's been clicking ever since then, and much more higher quality. I'm still trying to improve it every so often, add in some other color lights here and there to create a little bit more color contrast to certain degrees, and just trying to make things feel like they're much more higher quality, and always learning. Always trying to learn what to do better, trying to figure out how to do things in a much more succinct fashion, get to the point better in certain places, and just trying to also edit things down where it's like, okay, I don't really need that portion. I can cut that thing out and try to make things work a little bit better in that regard. And I do a lot more things where I go back now. If I find certain things that aren't quite working, or I edit them to a certain point, it's like, okay, that's a little too choppy or whatnot, I go back and reshoot things. I'll re-record some points of audio or something else like that to make everything kind of flow together better, or just get my presentation across a little bit more smooth. So it's like just constantly making things better. And I always kind of like, a lot of people like, okay, if they make a flub while they're shooting the video, they'll just put like a little text sort of like correction on screen or whatnot. It's like, okay, I kind of understand you're trying to get this out quick and stuff like that, but I almost never do that unless it's like one of these videos, like a sit down update video where everything's a lot more relaxed or whatnot. Or if I'm doing like a proper movie review, a retro video series, anything like that, I'll try to actually go back, reshoot things, insert the correct information at certain points in time to make sure everything comes together properly as a properly produced video, instead of just trying to flash some text on screen to kind of fix things and after the fact, where I don't feel like I want to go back and do things. I feel like I have a certain standard of quality that I really want to go back and like, okay, I'm going to go back and reshoot this portion, get the lighting and all the camera stuff, everything like that just right, to make sure everything matches as close as possible, and then reshoot that portion to make sure it all fits together. I can edit everything together seamlessly. So getting back around to that graveyard shift video, I'm going to try and look up something really quick here, but when I did the reviews on those two 80s vampire films, the first one is sourced from is from a DVD, but I think it's like an old like Laserdisc freaking master or whatnot, because it doesn't look all that good. The second one was sourced from a VHS tape because it never even got a DVD release. But the director of the film currently has a comment on it much more recently, but at about 2 or 3 months after I posted the video, he actually emailed me and just kind of imparted certain things, like he was appreciative that someone discovered the film and talked about it and stuff like that. But he was kind of like talking to me. His name is Jerry Sikori. I didn't pronounce his name in the video because I knew I'd butcher it like this. So Jerry Ciccoritti. So Sicoriti, I guess. But he actually emailed me, kind of imparting some behind-the-scenes information that the producers that he worked with on those films kind of didn't work with him very well. They kind of hindered his entire creative vision for the entire things. They kind of like promised him certain things and they didn't deliver, and they kind of curtailed certain things he wanted to do with those two films that didn't come out quite as the way he wanted them to. So kind of interesting to go back and look at those, because the first one's very stylish. It's got a lot of mood to it. I didn't feel like it quite worked overall. The second one's just really kind of silly, but it's got some stupid, goofy moments in it that are worth kind of revisiting the videos for. They're not very long. They're both under 14 minutes or so, kind of worth checking them out and seeing the comment that the director left on it more recently or whatnot. It's pretty much the same information he imparted on me several years ago, but it's kind of an interesting thing on that. And obviously, when I did my Redux review of In the Mouth of Madness, actress Julie Carmen actually watched the video, actually tweeted about it, endorsed the whole thing, and tagged John Carpenter the whole thing. I don't think he actually watched the whole thing, but she endorsed the video. She watched the whole thing, and I felt kind of self-conscious. I felt self-conscious where I'm like, okay, I gotta kind of have to put the phone outside in the hallway or whatnot to kind of focus on finishing watching the film, so I don't get so distracted or whatnot. But it was. So I still maintain as a very strong thing. So whenever I get around to doing something about Fright Night Part 2, I'm kind of expecting something in that regard. But really nice lady. I'd really like to meet her sometime. If she ever does a horror con, she would get a lot of traction. There's a lot of Fright Night 2 love out there. she would get a lot of traction on that regard if she ever did one. But I'd like to meet her at some point in time and just like say in person, thank you for watching the video. I very much appreciate it and stuff like that. So it was when the Scream Factory disc came out for it, so I had all that extra information. It was like the perfect time to do it because the original version I did back in 2013, I was shooting it Halloween night, where I was shooting the video and then having to run downstairs and answer the door for trick-or-treaters or run back upstairs and finish shooting the video. And then I actually shot the video, edited the video, released the video all in the same night, and then got off for a late night theatrical screening of Halloween. So you can see why I want to redo the video. little scattershot, little rushed in that regard, so it was much better video the second time around. And same thing with like the Lord of Illusions video and a few other things, the Howling one I did as a redux and stuff like that. So really good things in that regard. But I'd say like I definitely like in terms of milestones, I like the last couple of ones would definitely be in terms of like late 2016 is when we started up the commentary tracks, because since I moved up to where I am now, which is much closer to where Steve is. Where before I was over an hour away, it's like, okay, now I'm up here, and I think we can, it feels like a good idea when I'm thinking about relaunching the Patreon, now that things are back on track, and talk about him coming in, doing stuff like just pitching Nightmare on Elm Street, because I know it's his favorite, and just like, I did it, took off so well, it's such a testament to great things, because it's such a major part of the entire channel. So much of the appeal of it is the two of us sitting down, talking about these films, good, bad, and otherwise. We're up to 150 altogether. I have done 150 commentaries on the channel up to this point. So next one comes out will be 151. So look out for that soon. But that's pretty incredible. From late 2016 up to now, over 6 years, we've covered over 150 films in that regard. So in combination of me, Steve, and Trent, covered 150 altogether. So Steve will probably hit 150 by the end of the year for the ones that he's been directly involved with, because I think he's probably around 130 range at this point in time. We'll have to do some checking on that later, but damn, so much things in that regard. But maybe not so much a minor milestone, but when I did like the Hard Target review in 2019, that was like one that really kind of like spiked things up a lot. I felt like that point in time things really just hit off a really good traction in that regard. Followed on through like the next year or two, getting up a lot of good things in terms of like the interactions, the traction, the engagement, the views, all of that type of stuff on the videos really was hitting out very strongly from that point onwards. So it was like, that was a great one I did. If you haven't got the 4K edition for King Lorber, it looks absolutely gorgeous. But it was a really good review. I really, really liked it because it's such a great freaking action film. But there's like the next year or so, next big one was Retro Video Series. And that kind of stemmed out from me kind of like toying around in 2020 about me and Trent doing like a Forever Cinematic podcast. Me coming up with a couple of topics to kind of get up on, but things really couldn't put together. It wasn't so much him, it was much more me, where it's like, okay, I got too much going on. I can't manage everything. Trying to plot out podcasts and dealing with the reviews and commentaries and do my own job outside of that type of stuff. So it was like, it was too much. But I had the one idea about, okay, doing something in regards to like, even just like a one-off video about like films that haven't made the transition or like DVD or Blu-ray or anything like that. Things are kind of like stuck in these old formats. And I got up to the Retro Video Series, thinking about the whole thing. It's like, okay, this could be a different type of thing on the whole channel here, an entire different series, highlighting and spotlighting all these different types of things. So it's like, great type of thing. And it's a slight reworking to a certain degree. So when I'm talking about like the Director's Cut of Jade or the extended cut of Ransom, stuff like that, or the Scream Director's Cut. Extension of a one-off video I did, I think it's back in 2014, maybe something like that. Whenever I first got Blu-ray, but before I actually got the drive on the computer to rip the footage, I did this video called the Extended Edition, which was supposed to launch another video series, kind of comparing the different cuts of different films. Because at that point in time, with Blu-ray, they were kind of like pushing for like, okay, you buy the Blu-ray, you get the exclusive director's cut or the unrated version of the film. They're really kind of pushing that a lot up to that point in time. Especially like even like something like the Wolverine. They did the unrated version of that whole thing only on Blu-ray. So I kind of like did a video where I compared like the theatrical and director's cuts of Riddick and the Total Recall remake. It all went off very well. Some people still catch it here and there today. It was like it never really took off, and I never found the point to really kind of go off and do that because it stopped being kind of a trend at that point in time after that. They really weren't doing that as much. And also because when Blu-ray becomes much more, I don't know if a dominant format, but much more the thing I'm focused on, it really didn't seem much of a thing, especially with newer films that really weren't doing as much of that extended cuts and director's cuts and unrated versions. Really kind of fell off to a certain degree doing that stuff as a sort of marketing gimmick and just trying to do things normal and whatnot, and DVD becoming less and less of a thing for me. It just didn't really become much of anything after that, but it was kind of an experiment to kind of do something and try to work on that. And obviously, the footage I had to grab was not from... I owned the discs. But I couldn't rip the footage at that point in time, so I had to kind of source it from other avenues and whatnot in that regard. But, yeah, just like... the only bigger things I kind of talk about were like the Forever Horror Months and stuff like that, because they were so big for me early on, because again, I was doing much shorter videos in the first year or two or three. Whereas like I could do a lot more videos making much shorter videos. Whereas I got more bigger into like longer form videos, they became much more of a struggle getting a lot more things done during October. And there was a certain point in time where like I had like 2 or 3 Octobers in a row where it was like there was some bad shit happening. Like again, 2019, 2020, a few other ones here and there. I was like, I had a lot of like personal problems going on, where I really couldn't dedicate the time to it, and things were in an upheaval and stuff like that. Things were going off in a good regard, so I got like maybe like 1 or 2 reviews done in the entire month, where like I felt kind of disappointed in myself. I couldn't get things out because I kind of set a precedent, being a big month with a lot of videos in that regard. But the commentaries kind of helped soften the blow to a certain degree, but I always had certain pride getting a lot of stuff done for Forever Horror Month. So I felt like last year or two, I've kind of gotten a little bit on a better track in that regard. But also in the last year, things have kind of fallen off after they got the whole debacle with the Miami Vice video, where things got blocked and demonetized and dealing with things, where I was getting a lot more sporadic stuff done because things kept happening and pushing things back. A lot of the views, the ad revenue, the interactions, the engagement, stuff like that really kind of fell off from where it were the previous year, where I was getting still continuing ride a wave of growth and everything, and then it just kind of dropped off to a certain degree. So there's a lot of stuff in like the last year. I was struggling to figure out what the hell the problem was, how to get back up on the same levels I was before, and just trying to deconstruct what the fuck is working, what the hell is not, and trying different things here and there, and things not working out so well. So it's just been a struggle the last year trying to figure out how to get back up on top of things and why things aren't working quite as well as they used to and stuff like that. So it has been difficult, and here and there and everywhere dealing with other things outside of that has made things even more difficult to certain degrees. But that's been the last 10 years, guys. It's been a little bit more of a struggle in some places than others. But I want to thank every single one of you guys for being here, new or old, anything like that. Thank you for watching stuff, commenting, liking, or subscribing is a big thing. But if you ever share the links around, that also helps extremely, extremely much to expand the channel, get more eyes into it, all that type of stuff. Anything you enjoy, share it around, because all of us creators really, really need that sense of community to kind of branch out and make sure everything keeps growing to a certain degree, so we still stay in good favor for the algorithm. They still like our stuff, so make sure the watch times are up and stuff like that. And there's a lot of engagement going on. That really makes everything very healthy for the channel. Makes everything go off in such a great way. So thank you very much, guys, for sticking around for all this point in time, and we'll continue to give out some great stuff in the future. So guys, thanks so much. Take care. Bye bye.